everyone, welcome to another What I Would Have Done Thursday. Apologize I had to delay this video. Unfortunately, I've been having issues with the volume again, unfortunately, but now it seems to be working, so hopefully I can get caught up with all the videos and have everything done by the end of this Sunday. So without further ado, for this particular What I Would Have Done Thursday, I wanted to briefly talk about Wild Wild West. Which is one of Will Smith's first, I think, flops when it comes to his acting career. I mean, it's been considered to be probably one of his worst. It's definitely one that has a lot of interesting and bizarre flaws to it. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk about those today and sort of express what I would have done if I were in the director's chair. Now, right out of the gate, this particular Western film, hence we have the title Wild Wild West, is designed to be a comedy. And what unfortunately does not work with this film is the comedy. It is poorly written and poorly delivered, to say the least, and it really doesn't make sense within the context of the West. I mean, say whatever you want about Seth MacFarlane's film. That was a Western film. I think it was something 1,000 Ways to Die in the West. At least that one was consistent in making fun of the time period and actually tried to illustrate some things that were consistent within the time period. This film does not provide that consistency at all. And I'm going to kind of explain sort of why that is. But again, first thing being the comedy, and obviously that has to do with the fact that they just wrote this out very poorly. So another thing that needed to be fixed was the plot, and this is where I'll get to why things kind of go very bizarre and don't make any sense. The thing about this film is that it tries to present itself as somehow kind of creative or interesting and unique without really giving any context to anything that is interesting or unique. So for example, we have things like a mechanical spider within this film. Yes, in a film that's a Western that's supposed to take place in the 1800s has a mechanical spider in it. It also has really bizarre technology that, again, does not exist within this period, doesn't have any context to exist within this period, and it doesn't give you any sense of really ultimately what the people that were behind this film were going for. So that all needed to be scrapped, and that was all essential aspects to the plot that didn't need to be there, or they were all parts of the plot that really didn't need to be there, even though they make it act like these are essential things to the story when they're really not. So that's kind of the point that I wanted to make, and how they take these things that don't really belong and try to fit them in somehow. But basically the film centers around Will Smith's character along with Kevin Kline's character, and they're basically supposed to be buddies who go against the bad guys. And in this case, they're supposed to be like some evil Confederate group. So they kind of want to, take control, I believe, of the government. It's really hard to follow their plan within this film because there's not a huge amount of context or backstory given to the villain, really all too much. So you're kind of left with a bizarre, somewhat ambiguous motivation, even though, you can just slap Confederates on them and then you say, oh, okay, those are our bad guys here. But, and they have the villain in a wheelchair, and this wheelchair is like nothing from that time period at all. And again, doesn't make any sense. So, I think giving a little bit more interesting backstory to the villain as well as the heroes would have made a lot more sense. They do try to touch on Will Smith being involved in the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken, but that completely falls flat on its face. So I think in order for this film to work, they needed to strip it to its bare essentials. You have Kevin Kline's character and Will Smith's character. They bond as friends. They maybe have some turbulence throughout the entire mission that they're sent on to battle the evil Confederates, and they end up saving the day and whatnot at the end of it. And you could have had the evil Confederates maybe have some motivation, feeling like they have no place in this new society that was sort of really created after the Civil War, where everybody was trying to be more or so united under one country. And you could also have the fact that the guy who's the main villain, who is an actual wheelchair within the film, you could have provided a backstory of him maybe serving in the war and having his life basically destroyed, and him wanting that revenge because of it. So again, bearing it down to the essentials is really what makes a film like this ultimately work. And they did not do that at all within this film at all. You don't get a sense of Will Smith and Kevin Kline's character really interacting or having a really genuine friendship throughout. And you don't get the sense of the villains being intimidating, and they seem kind of stupid and not well thought out. So you have that as well. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't have made this a comedy. I think it could have gone two different tones. It could have gone on a comedic route. It could have gone the comedic route by having all of these characters kind of be goofy and zany and ridiculous and make kind of a little bit of an over-the-top plot. But again, they make it way too over-the-top in the actual film. So obviously, they kind of needed to obviously downplay it, I think. And again, make the comedy work within the essence of the time period. So make fun of, how horrible it was to really live in those days, and, how, and make fun of, the crazy, maybe rules that were involved in the dress. And, if you point fun at things like that and make it a Western, it makes it all the more enjoyable because you understand the time period in which it's taking place, and you understand the importance that the time period has to the film. So again, had they approached it from that angle, I think it would have been a lot stronger and would have generated more humor and more comedy. Another route they could have gone on was the serious route, where they make the characters where they make everything more so of a drama. Still have your heroes, your villains, and just make it maybe a more of an action-packed movie than really a movie based within comedy. I think either approach would have suited itself well. What again is what really deeply falls flat with this film is not just the comedy from a writing standpoint, but obviously the execution of it with the actors doesn't work. And I could sort of see why they were kind of lost, because a lot of what the story, at least the story in its entirety and how it's presented, doesn't really ultimately add up. And then you have all these add-in characters that don't really serve a purpose. So you get a lot of awkward moments, and you see how certain things don't really lead up to anything, and that's really something that doesn't work, especially when you're trying to create a film that, again, is trying to be kind of a Western comedy, where you kind of want things to add up somehow or be connected in some way, shape, or form, because then it makes it funny, and people can more so enjoy it. So again, I think had this film done the steps that I suggested, I think we could have gotten something that was a lot more interesting, and it definitely wouldn't have been a huge disappointment, and it wouldn't have really been all that ridiculous, and you would have had a better essence of what was going on, because there's a lot of parts within this film where you have really no clue what's going on, because they add in all of these, again, strange technology. They add in a spider, that doesn't make any sense. They throw in these jokes that are just so unbelievably awkward and don't add into anything, and you really don't get a sense of these characters. And if they had Will Smith be like the street smarts guy and then Kevin Kline be the bookworm or something like that, that would have added a lot more character and context. But they're not really given all too much as far as personality is concerned either. So again, it's just kind of, there's just a lot of things that don't, that feel, or at least don't fill the film, so you're left with this kind of hollow shell, and again, you're left with basically nothing after you leave. So that's really honestly though what I personally would have done had I been behind this project. But I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say and see what they would have done had they been in charge. But yeah, this film has definitely been around for quite some time because this is again the early days of Will Smith coming to the screen. So it's been around, and a lot of people seem to really recognize this one as being one of his worst or one of his more poorly executed ones. So I think, yeah, it's definitely safe to say that this one needed a lot of work. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all next video.